All right, let's begin. My name is Lydia Larson. I work for the Chowchilla Elementary School District, teaching 3rd through 5th grade music, general music, at Reagan and Fairmead Elementary. I got my preliminary credential from Stanislaus State. It's multiple subject, but I have a single subject authorization in music, which is what I use to teach. Originally, I was born in Ohio. I received my bachelor's degree there from Akron. And I didn't go into music teaching right away. I went into music therapy because I wanted to use music for more than just performance. So I came out here to study that. I did oncology rotations, special needs, and geropsych, as well as an internship in acute psychiatric, which helps with my teaching. So I thought it was, relevant to put in here, especially for the socio-emotional reasons and behavioral reasons. But I didn't stick with music therapy because I wanted to teach kids at a younger age. I wanted to give them something at a younger age they could take with them. So I ended up getting my credential, and my first job was interning at Wilson Middle School in the same district that I work for now. And they opened up a new position for music last year, and I applied, and it's been fantastic. I do want to say before I get into my teaching standards that I may be slightly different as a teacher than most of the average induction candidates because I don't have a homeroom class. I do teach elementary, but I teach all of 3rd and 4th grade and all of 5th grade. So I have 27 classes total in 30-minute periods. I see each class once a week. So that is my structure of teaching, is periods. For me personally, my standards for this year were CSTP 3 and CSTP 5, so understanding and organizing subject matter for students and assessing students for learning. So basically curriculum and assessments. Teacher growth, right? So at the beginning of the year for CSTP 3 for curriculum, I created a system called Musical Karate, which is belts for every unit, and the kids loved it, but it was my structure for the units. Although I did that, I also throughout the year had to make a lot of adjustments to the curriculum because I only saw my students once a week. So I needed to kind of accommodate for what happens between that week or maybe even 2 weeks if they have a sub or they don't come for some reason, they have an event. So I would see them intermittently instead of every day. It was difficult to assess also. And I, at the beginning of the year, had a very limited time with my colleague, Sarah Klein, who's wonderful, my senior, and has many years in teaching music. Our schedules were opposite, so throughout the year we worked hard to accommodate each other and to develop curriculum through PDs and to get a good workflow going for refining everything we're doing for the curriculum. So by the end of the year, or until we closed, I should say, that was happening. For CSTP 5 assessment, at the beginning of the year, I assessed by group, and I struggled because for music, half of my assessing is performance-based. So how was I going to assess a group of drumming students the way you would normally assess someone with a quantitative written exam or something? It was quite different for me. So I had to really think about that. And I did improve a lot throughout the year. And during the spring, I ended up doing both a written cumulative content exam as well as a performance exam. I did figure it out. So it worked out pretty well. So for my ILP, goal 1 was to expand. Whoa, come back. Are we going the right way? There we go. My goal was to expand and deepen my ability to facilitate the 3rd and 5th grade general music curriculum. And this was really important for me because it took a rigorous effort on my part, just as a teacher, to be able to come up with consistent structure for curriculum. And it did take a lot of personal growth. For my pathways, I'm just going to breeze through this real quick for time. I met with both admin and my colleagues before the school year started to discuss how to align with California state standards, as well as how to structure curriculum, which is when we came up with musical karate. And then I also shadowed my colleague Sarah at Fairmead, so I observed her general music classes for behavioral reasons, for how she structured her classes, for just space in the classroom, spatial awareness in the classroom, how she handled the kids and instruments. So that was really helpful to me for many reasons, but it did help me with curriculum. I also, well, this is incredibly important, I also recorded my early lessons. I think for about 6 or 8 weeks, the first part of teaching for me, I recorded and reviewed my lessons weekly just for introspection and to see how things were working, see how the kids were engaged. And that really helped me refine what curriculum was being retained and what wasn't also. About October, I started meeting Sarah for a biweekly PD for hours. We would meet and talk about curriculum because my students eventually end up in her classes. So it's very important for us to coordinate. And we both attended CASMAC, which is a music education conference. And we attended classes for our respective grade groups on pedagogy and assessment. All of these pathways directly attributed to my ability to facilitate curriculum. So I think it was really a good way to go. What it ended up looking like in the classroom though, like I said, was musical karate. So the kids were involved with knowing what was expected for their units and what the curriculum was going to be for that unit. I ended up also creating those formative and summative assessment protocols for the units. And the key thing that came out of the CASMAC conference was chunking and spatial guides for how information is given to the kids. So for example, in 30-minute periods, there'd be about 15 minutes of content instruction at the front of the room, and then we would go back to our sit spots and do like an interactive practical experience with music or playing instruments or performance-based. So that was how we'd structured classes. And obviously the use of Sedai and Kagan was very helpful. For Kagan in particular, call and response is like an everyday thing all the time. I used it a lot. I used total body response a lot. I also used a lot of the fact that many students spoke Spanish, so many words in music or Italian, and there's a great deal of connections, which was really helpful. Just a brief example of how Sarah and I would create like a whiteboard structure of our next units. This is unit 1. We'd have a main idea, and then in red are conceptual information that the kids need to know. And in blue is performance-based ideas that the kids need to know. So that's how they would see it, and that's how we would show it to them initially, so they knew what they were getting into and they would understand, oh, this idea is a part of meter, or this idea is a part of the rhythm cafe system. It was helpful for kids who are more cerebral. Measurable outcomes. So this is what I wanted the kids to do to show that I understood how to develop curriculum. I wanted them to be able to pass as a class their performance and content-based exams with 70% accuracy or better. And I expected every class to get at least a C. And the way I judged that was group cohesion, how they listened to each other and handled instruments together, how they executed performance-based skills, and how they could recall concepts. And in the end, they did meet that goal. All classes did pass with a 70 or higher, and we're going to go through a lot of data in the coming slides that shows that. So this is just a picture of me at a board presentation doing bucket drumming with the kids for our unit 1. And I'm not going to expand this video because it looks like this, but we're going to hear in this video me examining things like quarter note and eighth notes and how they are able to listen to each other, follow cues, things like that.
Only following what Ms. Larson says, okay? Listen to Ms. Larson first. I love that we sounded like how many people? One person.
So I'm reminding them they sound like one person. I'm reinforcing that concept. They are also saying the terms as they hit the buckets. That's a really good for like total body response and things. So this is how I was doing performance assessments. And then for conceptual, this is just them creating bars of music and using the beats and fractional beat values to create bars of 4 beats. So they can see on their whiteboards that they're creating bars right here. And this is the bread and butter. So in yellow, we have conceptual understanding, and performance is in purple. This is pre and post tests for every class at Reagan for Unit 1. And what I gather from this information is that students coming into my music class had a pretty solid experiential knowledge already, because you can tell that the purple bar is a less severe difference between pre and post test than the yellow bar. So what that tells me is that they learned a lot of conceptual knowledge that they didn't know coming in. So let's take Ms. Hernandez's class right here first. They did know some of this experiential performance-based knowledge coming in, but the amount that they grew in conceptual understanding as a class, everybody got it right 100% across the class. Not all classes achieved that, obviously, but this class in particular went from only getting a couple points right to getting everything correct. So I think that shows that as a teacher, I was able to facilitate curriculum well. And then this is post-test data. So if you can follow me, these are Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the number of classes here at Reagan is on the left. So these are classes that passed with a C, B, or A for their units. And it should be mentioned that no class got less than a C. So every class did pass with a 70% or higher. So 3 classes, 70%. This is C, 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 C. B's in orange and A's in green. The average is a B, the average, with 10 classes here in these middle units and 9 classes and 8 classes here. So most classes are getting a B, but by the end, you can see in the last unit, we switched over and the majority of classes received an A, which is pretty good. These are my 3 focus students. I'm gonna fly through this because we're gonna talk about them at the end. All 3 are boys. The first was chosen because he has autism spectrum disorder. He's a mainstream student. The second, YR, was chosen for behavioral reasons. In more or less words, he is extremely smart and very bored. And Archie A was chosen for academic reasons. He had several years of music coming into my classes and was often bored with content, and but sometimes try to manipulate the class or teach my lessons to students around him because he thought that he should move faster than I was moving, things like that. We'll get back to that. This is their data, nothing special. All of them except for Archie had a rough pre-test score, which is average across classes because Archie came in with a lot of knowledge, but all of them had pretty average post-test scores. And this is their unit scores across time. So Archie obviously pulling straight A's the whole time, coming in with all that knowledge. And the most compelling thing here is the trend upward for Wyatt and for Ben. And I would guess that especially for Ben, this trend upward may be related to the class's ability to work with him as a mainstream student and his difficulties that come with that. So we definitely had a more supportive classroom as the year went on. So for my second goal, extended and deepened my understanding of assessment protocol. So this is how do I assess things. The ways I took to get better at this were those reflection days that I had as part of the units where kids were actually involved in explaining what they learned and what they wished to learn, like KWL charts almost, but more reflective. I also had to seek some outside help with administration and from my colleagues for this because assessing performance-based ensembles was not a strength of mine coming into this job. And obviously at the CASMAC conference, I did attend a class about assessment. So what did I want the outcomes to be for this that would show that I achieved this goal as a teacher? I wanted the students to be able to perform at a 75% average as a class in these 3 areas. And I wanted all classes to pass with a 75% or greater. So yes and no to whether this was met. Yes, all but 1 class did perform at a 75% average on these each portions individually, but 1 class did not pass with a 75% average. So almost very, very close to getting these goals both, very close. And we'll see the data soon. So in reference to this goal about deepening my understanding, what it looked like was group assessments for performance-based ensembles at the beginning of the year within my class. So this is like a drumming unit, right? ensemble. And then in the fall, we had 3 units. So I took the content portions of those units and created a cumulative exam that we took in January. And I intentionally, February, first week of February. I intentionally did this after Christmas break as a testament to my ability to get them to retain information, because it's a new position and I'm a new teacher. So I wanted to show that even after Christmas break, they would retain that knowledge. So we only had 1 week of review. They took that test and the results were pretty good. But this is what the test looked like. Duration, pitch, and dynamics, all written, covered the main ideas of the 3 units and some information about the units and having to fill in beat values and pitches and match dynamics. So this is what it looked like. This is 5th grade, so this is Fairmead. Since I did Reagan the first time, I chose Fairmead this time. Fairmead totals, this is the important number right here. The green is the total of the class average for percentage. So the class average total percent is in green. So 75%, yep. Only 1 did not get that. It was Miss Lewis's class, and it should be mentioned that Miss Lewis was out for surgical leave for, I think, 2.5 months. So there was various different substitutes and long-term subs who filled in for her. So it's impossible to say for sure, but it may have been a contributing factor. But on units, as far as units go, pitch was the highest scoring unit, I think, across the board, which I think is very interesting because it's difficult. For my 3 boys and focus students, Archie straight A's across the board because of that pre-existing knowledge. Wyatt barely skimmed out with a C, behavioral reasons, I would guess. And Ben P actually did an exceptional job towards the end. He was very committed to learning the content. He has a great recall, so it worked out well for him. And this is the bread and butter for focus students. This is why I chose them. So with the few minutes we have left, I just want to talk about these 3 kids. So Ben P came in with crying episodes, extreme anxiety. He loved to be in music, but he was extremely shameful about the behavior of the class, or when the class would miss content questions, or if he couldn't handle the simulation, he would be ashamed and he would often cry. So we as a class had to come together and talk about supportive dialogue and what his needs were and how to help him in those situations. And as the year went on, the class became very supportive of him, and he became more able to accept those assistive learning devices like having earphones or just needing a break and a timeout and not feeling so shameful about them. So it was quite a success, and his data is right here. For Wyatt, he has a problem with authority, and I suspect it's because he's incredibly smart. But for him, he was really combative with other students. I would guess out of boredom if I had to guess. And what we ended up working on was giving him slowly more and more responsibility. So I would give him a job, and if he handled the job professionally, then he could have that job next week, and I might give him another job. So he would be in charge of telling me who wasn't there that day, or he would be my board helper. But he only could do these things if he was respectful to other students. So it took a while for him to get that. He would be boastful about it at first, and we had some volatile weeks where he wasn't able to handle it. But in the end, I think he did come out with a more mature attitude about responsibility. So I would say that was a win. And then Archie was a very simple fix. All it took for him was just one conversation about respect in the classroom, and I ended up giving him a lot of responsibility and making him a teacher helper. He was designated to help students who weren't understanding content, and he was also given, teacher's aid responsibilities like explaining some content, new words that he knew, and he really appreciated that. So that made the class less boring for him and kind of gave him a purpose. But as you can see right here, after October, no more shout outs, very easy to get along with class, the class as a whole. And this is just what we're doing now, distance learning. So students are making instruments based on our orchestra unit. These are all percussive instruments that they come up with at home. So I thought it was kind of cute to include that. And what I want to do, for my trying to rush because I'm at 19 minutes. For CSTP3, I put myself in the applying stage at the beginning of the year, and I actually ended up keeping myself there. And the reason was because I felt like with it being a new position and I was new to executing it and we didn't get to finish the school year, I just felt like it was appropriate for me to stay there. I wouldn't have felt confident moving on. And for CSTP5, I started exploring and I moved myself to applying because I did develop and I am much more confident about assessing both performant and content-based categories of music. So I intend to, this summer, improve and continue to develop curriculum because I'm going to have a new year of curriculum to work with. The fourth and fifth graders this year will have already had my curriculum from last year, so I need to build on it. I'll also need to continue attending, these PDs and department meetings to help me with both my curriculum and learning ensembles because I'm going to be taking electives next year as well. So in the future, in the far future, I want to keep learning about curriculum and keep building it, but I also want to focus on my ability to facilitate choral groups, especially in terms of classroom management and efficiency. I'd like it to be a very efficient group. So that's my goal for the next 5 years. I know we usually open it up to questions at this point, so please email me. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about how my job works, how I took this data, my focus students, anything like that. My email is right here, and I'd love to hear from you. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing your comments.